Mantra 16. We are the purport by Srila Prabhupada of Mantra 16. I'll quickly just read the translation. O my Lord, O primeval philosopher, maintainer of the universe, O regulating principle, destination of the pure devotees, well-wisher of the progenitors of mankind, please remove the effulgence of your transcendental rays so that I can see your form of bliss. You are the eternal Supreme Personality of Godhead, like unto the sun as am I. So the devotee is here praying to the Supreme Lord, please remove this Brahman, the Brahman effulgence, which is covering my vision of your beautiful form. The Lord has a beautiful Satchidananda form. So the devotee saying, kindly remove this effulgence so I can see your form. And we were reading from the purport that how the devotee realizes the Supreme Lord in his impersonal feature as the Brahman. When we understand the Lord without, okay, the volume is low. Are you all able to hear me?
I can hear you properly.
It's fine.
Anisha, maybe you want to see if you need to increase your volume. So the preliminary understanding of the Lord, if we try to understand God without any potency, without any energy, so the understanding is that God is formless, He has no form, no qualities. Then as one progresses, one understands God with material opulences, material energies. One understands God as the creator of this material world, the maintainer, the annihilator. So one understands the Paramatma feature of the Lord. So the first is the Brahman effulgence, understanding God without any form, without any qualities. That is understanding God as Brahman. Then if one understands God with being the creator of this material world, one understands God as Paramatma. But as one continues further, when one understands God as having both spiritual potencies, material potencies, that the jivas are also his potencies, then one has a complete understanding of the absolute truth, Bhagwan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we had been reading this yesterday. We'll continue now. Will someone like to read?
Anybody else willing to read? Okay, I'll read them. Okay, and the Lord fully maintains his unalloyed devotees and he guides them progressively on the path toward devotional perfection. As the leader of his devotees, he ultimately awards the desired results of devotional service by giving himself to them. The devotees of the Lord see the Lord eye to eye by his causeless mercy. Does the Lord help his devotees reach the supermost spiritual planet, Golaka Vrindavan? Being the creator, he can bestow all necessary qualifications upon his devotees so that they can ultimately reach him. The Lord is the cause of all causes. In other words, since there is nothing that caused him, he is the original cause. Consequently, he enjoys his own self by manifesting his own internal potency. The external potency is not exactly manifested by him, for he expands himself as the Purushas, and it is in these forms that he maintains the future of the material manifestation. By such expansions, he creates, maintains, and annihilates the cosmic manifestation.
So the spiritual world is maintained by the Lord by his spiritual energy, internal energy, by himself. And he himself is residing in every of this Vaikuntha planet. Just as in the material world, we have the deity of the sun god, the moon god, or we have the deity of the earth. Every planet has its own deity. In the spiritual world, the Lord is there, either himself in Golok Vrindavan, which is the highest planet of the Vaikuntha sky, and in the other planets of Vaikunthas, he's there in his Narayan expansions. But what happens in the material world, he expands as these Purushas, the Purusha avatars. Does anyone know who are they? The Purusha avatars? The three of them.
Trinity?
No, the Vishnu of that Trinity, yeah, the Shirodakshai Vishnu. So these are the Karnodakshai Vishnu, the Garbhodakshai Vishnu, and Shirodakshai Vishnu. Karnodakshai Vishnu is expansion coming from Krishna. Krishna expands as Karnodakshai Vishnu. Karnodakshai Vishnu lies on the causal ocean. From his breathing comes out all these universes. He enters into every universe as Garbhodakshai Vishnu. From the navel of this Garbhodakshai Vishnu comes Lord Brahma. And this Garbhodakshai Vishnu then further expands into every atom of the universe, into the heart of every living entity. And he's known as the Paramatma. And this Vishnu is the one of the Trinity, the Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh, which we say. So it's this Shirodakshai Vishnu. So we can see that the work of creation, maintenance, and annihilation is done by these Purushas. They are also expansions of Krishna. And annihilation, how? When Mahavishnu, when he breathes in, again all the universes go into his body. When he breathes out, all the universes are manifest. When he breathes in, everything is again gone into his body. So Krishna, by being pleased upon his devotee, he gives himself to the devotee by his causeless mercy. The devotee, he has devotion for Krishna, and Krishna reciprocates. If we do research work, Govindam Adipurusham Tam Aham Bhajami, Lord Brahma says. We do research work, who's our father's father, father's father, father's father. Like this, we do research work, we'll come to Lord Brahma. Have to, because he's the original created being in this universe. And Lord Brahma says, Govindam Adipurusham Tam Aham Bhajami. Oh Govinda, you are my seed-giving father. He says, Sarva Karana Karanam, you are the cause of all causes. So the Supreme Lord Krishna, he's the cause of all causes, and he gives his mercy to the devotees. He brings them back to Godhead. He gives himself to his devotee. I was just hearing the pastime, because today is the first day of Bhishma Panchak. So many devotees are speaking about Lord Bhishma Dev. So Radha Govinda Maharaj was hearing his lecture that how when Bhishma Dev is lying on the bed of arrows, everyone goes there to hear from him. All the great sages are going there. There is no WhatsApp, there is no mobile phones. No, people are not calling each other to say, oh, come, Bhishma Dev is going to speak about Krishna. But they understand these are great personalities. Vyasadev, Dhaumya, Narad Muni, Parasar Muni, all these great personalities are coming because they understand that he's going to speak about Krishna. And Bhishma Dev is telling Yudhishthir that here this Lord Krishna, he's the cause of all causes. He's the Supreme Lord. And yet, because he has love for you, because he has so much love for you, Yudhishthir, that he is kind to me, that he's come before me. When I'm dying here, he's standing here before me so I can see him when I die. It's not because I have any devotion for him, but because you are related to me. Because Bhishma Dev was the great grandfather, of Yudhishthir. So that's the humility of Bhishma Dev. And then he goes on to say that out of his love for you, he became your messenger. Krishna is the Supreme Lord, but he's acting as an ordinary messenger man, a courier. We send a letter through a courier. We don't go personally. So Yudhishthir, he sent this peace message through Krishna to Duryodhana. So Krishna does not need to do that, but out of his love, he does that. When Krishna became the chariot driver of Arjuna, it's not that he's only driving a chariot, but he's taking care of the horses when the horses are injured. He's giving them medicine, he's feeding them, he is waiting. He helps Arjuna get on and off the chariot. He's really taking part. He's really acting like a chariot driver. So, and it's not that Arjuna is being proud that God is my chariot driver. No, it's loving reciprocation between Arjuna and Krishna. So, this is what he gives himself to his devotees. Here we are hearing Prabhupada saying, giving himself to them. This is the position of the devotee. So, we continue reading.
The living entities are also differentiated expansions of the Lord Self, and because some of them desire to be Lords and imitate the Supreme Lord, He allows them to enter into the cosmic creation with the option to fully utilize their propensity to Lord it our nature. Because of the presence of His parts and parcels, the living entities, the entire phenomenal world is stirred into action and reaction. Thus, the living entities are given full facilities to Lord it our material nature. But the ultimate controller is the Lord Himself in His plenary feature as Paramatma, the Super Soul, who is one of the Purushas.
So, where do we come from? We are the Jivatmas. We are part and parcel of God. No one or nothing exists without being related to God. Everyone is coming from God. Everyone is God's energy. Just as the material world is a manifestation of his material energy, the spiritual world is a manifestation of his spiritual energy. We, the Jivas, are manifestation of his marginal energy. We are parts and parcels of God. We are tiny, separated expansions of God. Separated expansions, not personal expansions. The personal expansions are the Vishnu Tattva. We are the separated expansions, so we are the Jiva Tattva. And so what happens? Some of us, we desire to imitate God. And to fulfill this desire of ours, He creates this material world. He allows us to come here so that we can indulge in our childish play of imitating God, of being controllers. Here, whatever our desires are is being fulfilled by the Supreme Lord, actually. We don't understand it. We think we are the controller. Just like, a child, he sees his father driving. Now, he's just a 2-year-old kid. But because he's seeing his father's driving, he said, I want to drive. So the father says, okay, come on my lap. And then he puts the child's hand on the steering wheel. Actually, the driving is done by the father, but the child thinks, what? I'm driving. So similarly here, the controller is Paramatma. He's doing everything, but we are thinking, I'm the controller. So the Supreme Lord is fulfilling our desires to play God, to imitate God. Continue.
Thus, there is a gulf of difference between the living entity, Atma, and the controlling Lord, Paramatma, the soul and the super soul. Paramatma is the controller and Atma is the controlled. Therefore, they are in different categories. Because the Paramatma fully cooperates with the Atma, he is known as the constant companion of the living being.
So till the time we are in the material world, the Paramatma accompanies us. Now someone may think the Atma and Paramatma is the same, that we are the same Paramatma. No, there is a difference. This is what we are understanding. If there was no difference, then why would the devotee pray to God? We are always dependent on God. There's always a difference. Also, we can understand we are the Atma, we are only inside our body. Krishna is the Paramatma, he's inside everyone's body. by him is coming remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. He says in Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sanivishta, Matasmritir Jnanam Apohanam Cha. By me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So Krishna is in our heart as Paramatma, giving us remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So Radha Govinda Maharaj was saying that we ourselves don't know what's in our heart. What will we know about others' hearts? Whereas Krishna, because he's Paramatma in everyone's hearts, he knows whatever is happening in everyone's heart. He's giving knowledge to everyone, remembrance to everyone, forgetfulness to everyone. So there is a difference between God and us, between Atma and Paramatma. We are Jiva, whereas God, he is Vibhu. We are Anu, he is Vibhu. We are the soul, he is super soul. We are Brahman, he is Para Brahman. So there's a huge difference.
The all-pervading feature of the Lord, which exists in all circumstances of waking and sleeping, as well as in potential states, and from which the Jiva Shakti living force is generated as both conditioned and liberated souls, is known as Brahman. Since the Lord is the origin of both Paramatma and Brahman, he is the origin of all living entities and all else that exists. One who knows this engages himself at once in the devotional service of the Lord. Such a pure and fully cognizant devotee of the Lord. I lost it. Okay, such a pure and fully cognizant devotee of the Lord is fully attached to him in heart and soul. And whenever such a devotee assembles with similar devotees, they have no engagement but the glorification of the Lord's transcendental activities. Those who are not as perfect as the pure devotees, namely those who have realized only the Brahman or Paramatma features of the Lord, cannot appreciate the activities of the perfect devotee. The Lord always helps the pure devotee by imparting necessary knowledge within their hearts, and thus out of his special favor, he dissipates all the darkness of the ignorance. The speculative philosophers and yogis cannot imagine this because they more or less depend on their own strength. As stated in the Katha Upanishad 1.2.23, the Lord can be known only by those whom he favors and not by anyone else. Such special favors are bestowed upon his pure devotees only. Shri Isopanishad thus points to the favor of the Lord, which is beyond the pure view of the Brahmajyotir.
So the pure devotee, he's completely understood his position that he is part and parcel of God, that he is not the body, his spirit, soul, part and parcel of God. And he's understood because he's part and parcel of God. He has a duty towards God. And so he engages in devotional service. And the Lord, when he sees such a pure devotee, when he sees the sincerity, he within the heart gives the necessary knowledge which is needed to come to him. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they come to me. So it's happening by the mercy of the Lord. Krishna sees the desire in one's heart and he gives one the necessary knowledge. But one who understands God as Brahman or Paramatma, they're not able to understand the Supreme Lord as a person. And what do the pure devotees do? When they meet, they're just hearing and chanting. The devotees hearing and chanting. We see Bhagavatam, whenever the devotees collect, they're hearing about the glories of the Lord. They're hearing about the glories of the devotees. That's all. And they take great pleasure. They take great pleasure in hearing about the Supreme Lord. So then the one who has only understood Brahman feature or Paramatma feature, they cannot understand, oh, what are these devotees getting so much bliss about? But when they also hear about the devotees of the Lord, they also become pure devotees. Like Shukadev Goswami, he was Brahman realized, he was a Brahmavadi, he was a Brahmagyani. He had understood the Supreme Lord in his Brahman feature. But when he heard the glories of the Lord, When he heard Srimad Bhagavatam, he became a great devotee, he became a lover of Bhagavatam. And also the four Kumaras, they were Brahmagyanis. Understanding the impersonal feature of the Lord. But when they smelled the tulsi leaves coming from the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu, they became great devotees of the Lord. They also started singing and chanting the glories of the Lord. And they cannot stop singing and chanting the glories of the Lord. They derive great pleasure in doing so. So the devotee does. And the devotee, he's always has the special favor of the Lord, just like they give the example that the lion, his cubs, they have special favor. The mother will hold them by the mouth, but not to eat them, but to give them special protection. So the special favor of the Lord is there on the devotee. Any comments, questions?
All good.
All good. So now it's almost going to be to half an hour. Are we reading 15 minutes more? If yes, then we begin the 17th mantra. If no, we stop here and we read tomorrow.
I don't mind. I can read.
What about the others? I'm not sure if they are okay with it.
I think, yes, it's fine. I'm okay.
It's fine. All right. Okay, so we can read 15
Also,
minutes. Yeah? Okay, thank you. Thank you. So then we read for another 15 minutes. It's Upanishad, mantra 17. Vayur anilam amritam
Vayur anilam amritam
athedam bhasmantam shariram
atedam bhasmantam shariram.
Om kratosmar kratam smara
Om krato smara kirtam smara
kratosmara kratam smara
krato smara kritam smara. Translation. Let this temporary body be burned to ashes and let the air of life be merged with the totality of air. Now, O my Lord, please remember all my sacrifices, and because you are the ultimate beneficiary, please remember all that I have done for you. Purport. The temporary material body is certainly a foreign dress. The Bhagavad Gita 2.20 clearly says that after the destruction of the material body, the living entity is not annihilated, nor does he lose his identity. The identity of the living entity is never impersonal or formless. On the contrary, it is the material dress that is formless and that takes a shape according to the form of the indestructible person. No living entity is originally formless, as is wrongly thought by those with a poor fund of knowledge. This mantra verifies the fact that the living entity exists after the annihilation of the material body.
So who is actually the living entity? We are thinking we are the body. We think that, okay, when we die, we may think that, oh, after when we have to give up this body, the body will be maybe burned to ashes, or it may be cremated or left for the birds to be eaten, and then we don't exist anymore. But Krishna tells about the soul in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 20, he's saying that we, the soul, we are the living entity. We continue to live on even after the material body is destroyed. So we are not the body, but we are the soul. So when we are speaking of the living entity, it's the soul that we are speaking on, not the body. The body, you see, we may now have different shapes looking differently, but when it is decomposed or burned, it all becomes the same, formless, right? So it's the body that is actually formless, but the soul has its own spiritual form. We, each of us, have our own spiritual form. And that exists even after we give up this material body.
In the material world, material nature displays wonderful workmanship by creating varieties of bodies for the living beings according to their propensities for self-gratification. The living entity who wants to taste stool is given a material body that is quite suitable for eating stool, that of a hog. Similarly, one who wants to eat the flesh and blood of the other animals may be given a tiger's body equipped with suitable teeth and claws. But the human being is not meant for eating flesh, nor does he have any desire to taste too. Even in the most aboriginal taste, human teeth are so made that they can chew and cut fruit and vegetable, although there are two canine teeth so that primitive humans can eat flesh if they so desire.
So we can see there in the nature, we see so much varieties of different living beings, different bodies, birds, animals, insects, human beings, trees. There's 8,400,000 species. Now these 8,400,000 species are there based on our different desires to enjoy, varieties of desires to enjoy this material world. Based on that, there are these 8,400,000 species. So it doesn't mean that the pig, there is no soul in the body of a pig. No, this soul is there. And the same soul for for some time it may have been in the body of Lord Brahma. And same soul maybe have been in body of a human being. Like us, right now we are in the body of a human being. We have also been in body of Lord Brahma. We have also been in body of worm and stool. So we have, this is the evolution of consciousness that is going on based on our desire and our activity, based on our karma and our activity. So one has a desire to eat meat, then one is given suitable body, like a tiger, to be able to eat flesh. One has desire to eat stool, one is given a suitable body, like that of a pig, to be able to eat. It's all, these are all souls. We have all been in all these different bodies.
But in any case, the material bodies of all animals and men are foreign to the living entity. They change according to the living entity desire for self-gratification. In the cycle of evolution, the living entity changes body one after the another. When the world was full of water, the living entity took an aquatic form. Then he passed to vegetable life, from vegetable life to worm life, from worm life to bird life, and from bird life to animal life, and from animal life to the human life. The highest developed form is this human form when it is possessed of a full sense of spiritual knowledge. The highest development of one's spiritual senses described in this mantra. One should give up the material body, which will be turned to ashes, and allow the air of life to merge into the eternal reservoir of air. The living being's activities are performed within the body through the movements of different kinds of air, known in summary as prana vayu. The yogis generally study how to control the airs of the body. The soul is supposed to rise from one circle of air to another until it rises to Brahma Randhra, the highest circle. From that point, the perfect yogi can transfer himself to any planet he likes. The process is to give up one material body and then enter into another. But the highest perfection of such changes occur only when the living entity is able to give up the material body altogether, as suggested in this mantra, and enter into the spiritual atmosphere, where he can develop a completely different type of body, a spiritual body which never has to meet death or change.
So here in the material world, we are constantly giving up one body and taking up another through the process of this evolution that of our consciousness, the evolution of our consciousness. We are sometimes in, so we go from the lowest to the highest, the aquatic to vegetable to bird to animal, to vegetable to worm to bird to animal and to human form. So this human form is the most developed in which we can have spiritual understanding. This is the form in which we can choose whether our next body we take is a material body or a spiritual body. So the mantra is telling us to give up the material body and take up a spiritual body. The yogis, here Prabhupada is mentioning that the yogis, how they manipulate the different life airs in the body, the prana vayus. There are the 5 or 10 different types of life airs surrounding the soul. And how by the breathing process, the yogi, he gives up his body to take up another body. But the perfection is to take up a spiritual body. After we give up this material body, to take a spiritual body, because any material body we take, the time in that body is temporary. That's not our true identity. We are spirit souls. So it's like how an actor, he's acting in different movies, so he keeps on wearing different costumes, but he's not those costumes. He's a person. So we are not these material bodies, we are the soul.
Here in the material world, material nature forces the living entity to change his body due to his different desires for self-gratification. These desires are represented in the various species of life, from germs to the most perfected material bodies, those of Brahma and the demigods. All of these living entities have bodies composed of matter in different shapes. The intelligent man sees oneness not in the variety of the bodies, but in the spiritual identity. The spiritual spark, which is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, is the same whether he is in the body of a hog or in the body of a demigod. The living entity takes on different bodies according to his pious and vicious activities. The human body is highly developed and has full consciousness. According to Bhagavad Gita 7.19, the most perfect man surrenders into the Lord after many, many lifetimes of culturing knowledge. The culture of knowledge reaches perfection only when the knower comes to the point of surrendering into the Supreme Lord, Vasudeva. Otherwise, even after attaining knowledge of one's spiritual identity, one does not come to the point of knowing that the living entities are eternal part and parcels of the whole and can never become the whole. One has to fall down again and again into the material atmosphere. Indeed, one must fall down even if he has become one with the Brahma Jyotir.
So based on our desire, based on our karma, we are taking on these different material bodies. And we are seeing a variety of bodies. Animals, birds, demigods, worms. But one who's intelligent, he understands that the spirit soul is one. Well, not that we are all, we are still individual souls, but he understands that inside every material body is an individual spirit soul. And this spirit soul is a part and parcel of God. So the spirit soul may be in the body of an elephant or a pig or of a demigod, but it is still a spirit soul, part and parcel of God. It's only depending on our desires or our misuse of free will that we may take on these different kinds of bodies, or our proper use of free will. Depend, because it's a free will, each can choose how to act. So one who's intelligent, he understands that it's actually the soul. He sees the soul everywhere and the super soul along with the soul. The Atma and Paramatma, he does not see these different types of material bodies. Now, it doesn't mean that he's going to go and hug a tiger. No, he deals with every entity differently, but he understands the position that everyone is part and parcel of God. So in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is saying that one who is the most perfect, he surrenders unto Krishna, understanding Vasudeva Sarvamiti Samahatma Sudarlapa, understanding that Krishna is the cause of all causes. There is nothing beyond Krishna. There's no one beyond Krishna. When one comes to the point of Krishna, then one surrenders himself. That is the perfection. And Krishna says such a great soul is very rare. So one may reach even up to the point of Brahmajyoti. But if one has no knowledge that each of us is part and parcel of Krishna, part and parcel of God, then even from such a high position of being in the Brahmajyoti, one falls down. Means one is understood I'm Brahman, understood I'm spirit soul. But if he doesn't understand that I'm spirit soul, part and parcel of God, then one comes back to the material world. But if one understands I'm part and parcel of God, he proceeds to the spiritual world. So the living entities, we individual souls, we are eternally parts and parcels of God. We can never become God. We are eternally individuals, eternally parts and parcels. It's not that at any point in our existence or at any point of our attaining perfection that we can become the complete whole. No, we can always remain part of the complete whole. Only God is the complete whole, and we are eternally His parts and parcels.
As we have learned from previous mantras, the Brahma Jyoti emanating from the transcendental body of the Lord is full of spiritual sparks that are individual entities with the full sense of existence. Sometimes these living entities want to enjoy their senses, and therefore they are placed in the material world to become false lords under the dictation of the senses. The desire for lordship is the material disease of the living being, and for under the spell of sense enjoyment, he transmigrates through the various bodies manifested in the material world. Becoming one with the Brahmajyotir does not represent mature knowledge. Only by surrendering into the Lord completely and developing one's sense of spiritual service does one reach the highest perfectional stage.
So one may say, I'm going to become one with God, that is, merge into the light, into the Brahman. But this is just still very partial knowledge. One is understanding only the Brahman understanding. One still has to understand, oh, I'm individual soul and part and parcel of God. We have to come to that point. Till the time we don't come to that point, we will keep on taking varieties of bodies in this material world based on our desire, based on our activity. And then when one understands I'm part and parcel of God, then he engages in devotional service. He understands he has a duty towards God. And so he engages in devotional service and he proceeds to the spiritual world.
In this mantra, the living entity prays to enter the spiritual kingdom of God after relinquish his material body and material air. The devotee prays to the Lord to remember his activities and the sacrifices he has performed before his material body is turned into ashes. He makes this prayer at the time of the death with full consciousness of his past deeds and of the ultimate goal. One who is completely under the rule of material nature remembers the heinous activities he performed during the existence of his material body, and consequently he gets another material body after death. The Bhagavad Gita 8.6 confirms this truth. Yam yam yapi smaran bhavam tyajati ante kalavaram tam tam ivayati konteya sada tad bhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. Thus the mind carries the living entity's propensities into the next life.
Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, whatever we have been thinking of during our lifetime, we are going to remember that at the time of death, and whatever we remember at the time of death, we are going to get that state in our next life. So usually, so we may think, okay, whatever I remember at the time of death, based on that, I'll get a next life. So I don't need to remember about God now. I will just remember Him at the time of death. And then I can go back to the spiritual kingdom. But it's not possible. Our mind is always going to be, it's always consumed. You know, whatever we have thought of, it keeps on thinking of that. And that's what it's going to think of at the end of at the end of life. So if we are only thinking of material things during the life, then we will remember only material things at the time of death. And so then again, our next body will be material. So the devotee here in this mantra is saying that he wants to finish, he wants to give up his material body. He wants to have a spiritual body in his next life. So when one trains by hearing about the Lord, chanting the holy name, worshipping Him, remembering Him, one practices during his life so that at the end of life, he can remember the Lord. Or if he can't remember the Lord will make him remember Him to attract the mercy of the Lord. So the devotee engages in devotional service so that at the end of life, he can go back home, back to Godhead, no more coming to the material world. We'll stop here. Are there any questions or comments?
No, all clear.
Thank you so much for listening and joining in. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.
Thank